Unemployment in Kenya remains a nightmare for millions of youth. Annually, Kenyan colleges and universities churn out an average of 50,000 graduates.
Iko 5 in 1 na ulikuwa unataka kala? Red. Okay, the red one. Ni sawa iko. I know the universities are all flooded. Like right now, me, I don't have a job. I'm a class of 2019. Maybe someone else of another class, and we are still doing the same course. So what about those ones that are still coming? It will still be a challenge. So because all of us, we cannot fit in offices, at least they can do other trainings.
There's no availability, real-time information. If it's courses that are being offered, people are not being told extensively what are these courses about. They are not able to make the right choices to create for job opportunities that they would otherwise create than being created for.
From an education sector perspective, government has a role to play in making sure that what we provide our learners, what we provide young people, fit into our goals as a country, as a nation, in terms of where we want to take ourselves as an economy. So that if we say, you remember when we were saying we want to grow our country as an industrialized economy by 2030. Right now we are saying we want to build a middle income economy. What does it take to build a middle income economy? So that's then you ping back to what skill sets, what courses, what kind of training do we do at high school, do we do at college, do we do at, and therefore when young people come out, they come out with skills that are matched with what is necessary in the market. So
there's a gap as far as career counseling is concerned in our schools. Even in the universities, I would say, we don't have very good programs, largely, that would advise students. However, some institutions are trying their level best, especially during orientation, and you find, like if you come to institutions when students are registering, you'll find a number moving from one program to another.
But the other thing is a personal obligation. You as the person who is going to school is expecting to go out there into the market. It's your job, it's your role to research. What do I want to be as a person? Is it marketable? There was a time in the world when you do things that interest you, isn't it? I want to be an historian, so I'll just study history. I'm not saying that history is not a useful subject, but if you're talking from an economic point of view, you want to develop a young person's capabilities to get out there and be marketable. Are they doing things that when they get outside there, they're going to find a place to fit in, and they're going to find returns that can sustain them?
There's no course I would call not marketable. It all depends on what is the purpose, what is the vision of the person seeking that course. Do you have a passion for it? I want to believe when you have a passion, you seek opportunities. They may be minimal at the beginning, but they'll open up at some point and you'll be better off.
You can walk into a class of 400 students with only one lecturer. There is no way that lecturer is going to have a personalized attention to the students. So, in comparison to a diploma class, you can get a diploma class of about 50 students, so the teacher is able to give personal advice, if it's advice, to give that special attention to the student. In most jobs, they have the notion that the degree is a communal thing. Like, it's not something that people get to study on their own in school and do the research on their own in school. Plus, in degrees, there is no extensive monitoring like they would have in diploma students or in diploma schools. In degrees, you're just walking into a class, listening to a lecturer, give the lecture, then just walk home.
Perhaps the diploma graduates get more in-depth training in specific areas because of the structure of the diploma. And I'm assuming a diploma that takes about 3 years. So again, it also depends on which diploma and in what area. If you have a diploma that's taking 3 years, for example, and you have a degree that is taking 4 years, a diploma may be having about 24 courses. A degree may be having about 50 courses. So if you are to put all the 50 courses into 4 years, and the diploma course that takes 3 years, 24 courses into 3 years, you have more time So there'll be more opportunities for maybe even skills training as compared to the degree.
There's quite a difference between our local curriculum and system of education and the international system of education. The number one thing that I saw was quite different was the way students interact with professors and the curriculum. So the interaction is more of a friendly interaction, and you can approach a professor and you can probably learn even in a better environment. Whereas here, even just the interaction with the professor is very formal and you can't interact freely, which I feel hinders education and it hinders your growth. And then also the curriculum, ours is theory-based, which I feel doesn't cater to this new age kind of environment.
There is a general problem with this, a structural problem with the education system generally, and it emanates from two areas. The question of what is the focus of the curriculum? Are we interested in what we call objectives? In other words, or goals that we have produced these people, they have learned this or the other? Or are we interested in the outcome and what the learner can do? If we focus much more on what the learner can do, then even the methods we choose, the structure of that curriculum will be much more interested in what the learner can do. So there is a mismatch between the learning outcomes and the actual output. And therefore you find it also affects even the question of the assessments that are being done. The assessments will largely focus on what the students know. So that's why the theory will come in much more, because we are interested in what you know. So if you can reproduce it in a paper and you get 100%, the better. But we are not looking at what can you do. So I think the orientation should be on what can be done. The good thing is the current, the newly introduced curriculum, competence-based curriculum, is actually looking at that aspect of what the learners can do.
Some of the unorthodox or unfair reasons why I would not get a job probably would be definitely knowing the employer. But the thing here is nepotism, tribalism, and all other forms of corruption will get you through the door and not your qualification or how good you are. I feel like it's good, at least even give the person an opportunity. Once you've met them, have the interview, give them an opportunity in as much as they've studied, learn their character, and then give them maybe a probation period, and then afterwards you can employ them. However, having a master's at a younger age is definitely an uphill task, particularly in Africa, not only in Kenya.
Most of the companies are saying that fresh graduates are not yet quite skilled about that whatever course they have done. So you will find most of them don't want to employ new graduates. They still want to retain the people that they had.
Sitting from an employer perspective and looking at how young people come in, when say you have a position, you're sent out an ad and see how applications come in. You can already see the guys who they are sent in the application because there's a job somewhere, because they didn't put much effort in looking at what do those guys want, what can I provide to those guys.
I think fresh graduates, I will not say they are not well skilled, because even a child, when he or she is born, she doesn't know how to eat. So training is what will make someone more experienced. But initially, when you're out of school, you are well equipped. So you just need some few trainings and then you'll be good.
Get yourself as a young person to learn other things, to get more capabilities that complement who you are.
It takes a lot to get a job in Kenya. So first of all, there are a lot of requirements, especially when the job has something to do with a government. So you have to get a clearance certificate from HELB. We have ESCC, we have CRB. So, and remember, all those processes, you have to incur a certain cost. And some of the job seekers cannot afford to pay that.
Employment essentially should be created by the private sector. In many countries that have grown, that have developed, the role of government is to enable private sector to grow and then to create employment that people take up and therefore reduce the rate of unemployment.
There are people who depend on you. You find that you're the firstborn, maybe, for example, in your family. Then your family spent a fortune to take you to school, only to find themselves in a situation of joblessness. So it becomes very difficult. That's why you find some of us thinking of suicide. It happens.
Some get depressed, they start using drugs, and they get hooked to drunkenness. Yeah, and the frustration is real. Also, not having a job makes you look like you're not having a direction in the society, and that's really not a good thing.
Others, like ladies, will go to search for maybe a job somewhere that they will not find, and they will get something else in return. Like they will be forced to get married because someone does not have a job, and maybe you found someone who is a bit well off. You see, you just say, me, because I did not get a job, let me just get married.
I've done a lot of lousy jobs before, and one of them was pulling a handcut. If you remember that you've gone to school and you're doing something that is below your level, it is really embarrassing.
I've worked in a car wash, hawked items in town, like clothes, sunglasses. I've worked in a butchery, and I've also had to, start my own job.
After I graduated, I've done quite a few jobs. I started with supermarket activations. I've also done marketing of exportation of labor. And when I used to come up country, I also used to go and sell cabbages, at my hometown.
I'm a beautician. That is, I do nails, makeup. I also do beads. I'm a bead worker, in short. I design jewelry. And currently I'm doing a bit of graphic design.
I decided to start an online business. Once I just sat down and said, I will not stay like this. Apply for jobs, and I'm not getting one. So every now and then, I need to call my parents or my siblings. I need this, I need this. So I decided I'm going to start an online business, which I was doing partly when I was in school.
So if you go to a country where private sector is suffering, or where the way to do business is difficult, the net effect is that you will find unemployment rate. That's one issue. So if we don't sort out our private sector, and in many cases you will hear about businessmen complaining about the tax policy in the country, which is one of the major problems with our country right now. Talking about cost of doing business, for example, energy, you'll hear people complaining about the cost of energy, or just the reliability of energy itself. Then you'll hear about issues with corruption and access to government services that sometimes make it difficult. Some companies have left our country, gone to Rwanda or other countries where they feel the government is enabling them to do business.
I decided not to open a physical business because of financial reasons. You see, if you need to open a physical business, you need to know where you're going to be getting rent at the end of the month. You need to have licenses and tax and all that. So it became very challenging.
It's sad because we are the same country where government encourages people to go into entrepreneurship, isn't it? I had the cabinet secretary for youth and I think an ICT encouraging young people not to expect government to give them jobs because they have been educated to go out there to create employment.
And again, the government should work on reducing taxes so that there can be increase of labor. You see, when the tax is too high, someone cannot even be able, like now me, I want to have my own shop, but the licenses, the what, I cannot be able to do that right now.
But then, what do they find when they start a business? Challenges. The first one is access to credit. In other countries like the US or in the UK or in Europe, entrepreneurs are connected with capitalists or venture capitalists, so to speak. So I have this idea, I've developed this app. Then I have this guy who I meet who invests in the app, and the app grows and it becomes a business. They take their portion, I get mine, I employ people, and the business grows. If we don't give young people, if we don't give entrepreneurs access to credit, they're not going to thrive. That's why in the second year, you realize this thing cannot work or it just falls off.
When it comes to job creation, we have the informal sector, the Juakali sector. When you look at it clearly, you'll find that it's the same government that is killing the Juakali sector, those who are creating the jobs, the way they are saying. Because these people are heavily taxed. Some of them are already closing businesses, and they're still telling us to create jobs. From where? When they have not made a business-friendly environment for us to create such jobs for ourselves.
From where I'm seated, the youth, they don't have money or the resources or even the space to actually create jobs for themselves.
That is one issue, it's access to credit. And one of the biggest problems we're having right now is because government, because of domestic borrowing, government is taking money from banks, local banks, that essentially are supposed to be giving money to private sector, small and medium enterprises that are growing. So if government is taking a lot of that, it leaves these guys with no money, or sometimes they are given credit at a high rate. That doesn't make sense. That's one big issue why our SMEs don't reach that second part that you're talking about.
In as much as the government is giving out the youth fund every year, there have never been proper channels to reach the youth. If it's the sub-chiefs, they have a list of the youth, but they do not take initiative to create the youth groups. They do not bring the youth together. They have not passed down this information sufficiently for the youth to know that there is a youth fund that they can access and how they can access it.
Transparency of how funds are used. For instance, this project that we had last year, the one for Kijana Initiative, let the funds be allocated properly and let them be used properly. As we go back down to the grassroots, let them allocate the funds to people who actually deserve the money. My thoughts on the Kazi Mtaani initiative are, it's again an initiative that I feel is politicized and just something to save face and nothing that is very realistic or even researched properly. Because if you give a graduate who has studied maybe engineering or medicine or let's say communication as myself, some manual labor. I'm not saying manual labor is beneath anybody, but let's specialize. So I feel like they should have done better research and taken more time into considering people's specialized careers and then give them something that they can actually use.
Those who are entrusted with that project misused it. Okay, first of all, the recruitment procedure was overly flawed because the chiefs and assistant chiefs went for their neighbors, friends, and family members.
Now, kazi kwa vijana and kazi mtaani, these are economic policy mechanisms. The first one, kazi kwa vijana, was used by government to inject money into the economy. Well, it's also used as a mechanism to get employment to young people, but they are temporary mechanisms. Like this last one, it was one of the mechanisms the government was using to pump in money into the economy so that it can grow because of the impacts of COVID. So they must be looked at that way. They are temporary mechanisms and they cannot be the solution to unemployment. If anything, the kind of employment that they provide, it's underemploying those people, isn't it? The guys have gone to high school, they have gone to college, they have gone to university, but that's what they get from government. Researching how the political economy of the country also, there have been arguments about how government does business with itself. So you hear there's this guy who is head of what corporation, or is head of what ministry, or is related to so and so in government, and they also have a business. So they supply government. Government essentially has business, but they don't say, which is something that should not happen. I don't think even the law and policy allows that. But in many cases, unasikia you're looking for a tender somewhere. That's where we got the word tenderpreneurship. because there's a connection between the way the politics happens, the way government is run, that affects business.
And again, the government should also work on reduce the retirement rate, because those people that are in those offices, they've worked for quite some time, our grandparents, and yet we are young people who are energetic. So at least they should give us a chance. Waondoe hao watu wazee.
Unfortunately, the government is not doing as much as they should, particularly those ones who have been recently elected into government, like the members of county assembly and the women rep. I feel like those grassroots leaders should do more, considering they know what has been happening even in the past, and they were elected among the youth. Most of them are even still in the youth bracket. So I feel like there's lots more that should be done, particularly in that grassroots level. So once such kind of initiatives are brought up and we have initiatives that cater for the youth or the women or the disabled, at least then there can be some progress. But right now, unfortunately, not much is being done.
In 2017, the government promised 1.3 million jobs annually. However, this is still a pipe dream. Out of the 13.7 million youth in Kenya, 5.7 million are unemployed.
But also that government just needs to do what it says it's going to do. Well, we have been seeing government increasingly employing one young person in cabinet or something like that. But a lot more needs to be done to get more young people into government positions, into politics. Because we are saying young people between 18 and 35 are about 40%. And there are people who are educated, there are people who think, there are people who have needs, there are people who have aspirations. And therefore we cannot be continuing with our processes of public policy making without them. And the irony is we claim that we are making those policies for them, but they are not involved or they are not adequately consulted. And for many times, young people just say, what's the point?
We should not look at the government to solve all our problems, and that should be understood by everyone. Education is important. The fact that there are people who went to school and are not doing some good job that they studied for should not be a reason for you not to go to school.
My message to fellow graduates who are at home hoping to get a job is don't lose hope, first of all. In as much as the environment is not conducive for most of us, I feel like just start somewhere, and especially now in this age of new media and technology, the internet, you never know who might be out there seeing your work and who might be out there to give you a platform or give you grants or even mentorship. So just keep at what you're doing, use whatever little resources you have, network as much as possible. In as much as I'm saying it's not good to get a job because of who you know, but it's only obvious that your network is your net worth.
I keep doing what I do because I love what I do. So it's not a question of is this a job, is this not a job? I think a job is any opportunity that you create for yourself, and in the process you grow your skills and you get paid. But first things, you should love your job.
Since March 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in a loss of 1.7 million jobs in the informal and formal sector.